Hi! Welcome to Family Friendly Circle Time. This week's Family Friendly Circle Time is going to be our last video that we'll be making. So I just want to say thank you to all the families who have watched and participated and engaged in the story and art making with their children. We really hope that you enjoyed what we've made and continue being creative with your children at home for all the time to come. So we're going to start off today's Family Friendly Circle Time with our show and share portion of group. And without further ado, here we go. Welcome everyone. Now you're here, let's have some fun. We'll read a book and play pretend. We'll do an activity and make some friends. Welcome everyone. I am so glad that you have come. For today's Family Friendly Circle Time, we are going to be reading the book Beautiful Oops by Barney Salzberg. Beautiful Oops by Barney Salzberg. Oops! A torn piece of paper is just the beginning. Every spill has lots and lots of possibilities. Bent paper is something to celebrate. A little drip of paint lets your imagination run wild. A scrap of paper can be fun to play with. A smudge and a smear can make magic appear. A stain has potential if you play with its shape. Holes in your paper are worth exploring. See? When you think you made a mistake, think of it as an opportunity to make something beautiful. The end. Hello! Welcome to the activity portion of Family Friendly Circle Time. Yay! Today's activity is going to be based off of the book we read, Beautiful Oops. Oops. Yes, Beautiful Oops. And so we are going to kind of be creating art that's based on loosely some oopsies. So what we're going to be making are these kind of blob, oh, we lost a googly eye.
That's okay.
These blob monsters. And how we're going to be creating that, we're going to start with these kind of watercolor blooms that kind of look like spills or kind of accidental things that might happen when you're creating art. And we're going to turn them into little googly eye monsters. Okay, so what you're going to need for today's activity is paper, watercolor paper if you have it, or a piece of paper that's thicker because we're going to be working with the paint quite wet, and so you need a paper that can handle getting wet, handle some water without it kind of tearing on you. Straws, yes, we're going to use the straws to blow the paint around, which is fun. We're going to be using these little doppers to suck up the water, and you'll see once we get going what we use them for. A lot of times these kind of doppers come with, if you ever have like Tylenol or baby medicine or sometimes eye drops, you might have these lying around the house. If you have them, grab them. We're going to use them for today's art activity. If you don't have the little droppers, you can just add the water with like a paintbrush or something like that too. So no worries if you don't have it. But if you have them, you can use your paintbrush. But if you do have them, they're lots of fun, and the kids really enjoy using them. They're pretty cool. So yes, and paintbrush. We need a paintbrush. So if you have some paintbrushes, we need those. We're going to be using watercolor paints, like all of our previous videos. I recommend the puck paints, especially with younger ones. They just are really easy to use, and they're a really good paint to introduce painting to your little ones, and they're lots of fun. So some watercolor paints. Okay, and if you don't have watercolor paints, like food coloring or something liquidy like that can color the water will also work too. So if you don't have watercolor paints and you have some food coloring around your house, you can use the food coloring too. You're going to need some googly eyes. So googly eyes, you know, are what we're using to kind of turn our little blobs into monsters. If you don't have googly eyes laying around the house, or you don't want to go out and get some, you can also just draw, right? You could draw the eyes on your creations with a marker or Sharpie as well. So that's fine if you don't have them, but we're going to be using googly eyes. And if you are going to be using googly eyes, you need glue. We're going to be using a glue stick. And again, any glue will work. If you have just white craft glue or whatever kind of glue you have around your house will work. We're going to use a glue stick for this. You're going to need some water. Okay. And like our other videos, I always use a baking tray to contain the mess. This activity specifically, you're going to maybe want something to place the paper in.
Because when you blow, then some of the water and paint might blow off the paper.
That's right.
So make a mess and don't have something to.
Exactly. So the chances, because you're going to be blowing paint around that's quite watery with the straw, the chances of the paint running off the paper are probably pretty likely going to happen, which is part of the fun. So get prepared for the mess. If you don't have a tray to kind of put the paper into, maybe put a towel or some newspaper or something underneath the paper that can that you don't mind getting paint on, that will contain the mess. Okay, so
let's get started.
Oh, the last thing that I forgot to mention is at the very end, once the paint is dry and you are hearing your googly eyes, you might want to get some markers. Any color will do, and we're going to be using markers to draw the little like mouths and noses and eyes and stuff onto our creatures. So you're going to need some markers, okay? Alrighty, and the other thing that I should say is it's a kind of a two-part process. And what I mean by that is you're going to do the painting portion first with the water and the watercolor and the blowing the paint. And because you're working with the watercolor really wet, you're going to want to let it sit for a while and dry before you move on to the second step of putting the googly eyes or drawing the little monster faces on. It's really important that it's really dry before you move on to the second step, because if you don't let it dry, you'll find that the markers don't work, and then the googly eyes won't stick, and it's not successful. And so yeah, so you'll want to do the paint part first, set it aside, let it dry. Maybe you do like a few of them. Maybe you do like 3 or 4 different ones, right? So while your kids are still having fun painting, the first one can be dry, and then you can kind of switch it in when they're done the third one. Or you just do the one, have a little break, and come back to it later, whatever you choose to do. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? So the first step in this project is to take your little dabbers or your paintbrush, whatever you're using, to add the water. You're going to just start by adding water to your paper, and you're going to want to start adding, you're going to want to kind of add like little, they kind of turn into little like teardrops or little circles when you first add them. And you want to kind of spread them out so they're not too close to each other. And then that way when you start blowing the paint, it kind of stays separate. So you don't want like a whole bunch on your paper. The idea is that you don't want the whole paper wet. You want just kind of little dabs of water spread out over your paper. Once you have the water down, you're going to want to get your paintbrush. And now in this part, you need to have the watercolor paint quite wet. And if you want, you can, as the parent, you can pre-spray or run the puck paints underwater so that they're already wet for your children if they're too young to kind of continuously dip in the water container. Okay, so you're gonna get lots of water on your brush. You're gonna pick what color you want to do. And you know what, parents? If you're doing this, sit down and do it with your children, and you can do it at the same time. It'll be lots of fun. So pick whatever color, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna encourage your child just to kind of lightly touch the brush to the water. And it's kind of cool because when the paint touches the water, it kind of absorbs all that color and it doesn't really go anywhere else. So you want to kind of just dab that color onto the water. Okay? Dab, dab, dab. And so you're really only adding the paint to where you put your water. You're not really adding paint anywhere on the dry areas of the paper. And, you know, you can tell your kids, oh, try, dab it on the water. And if they're really little and they're kind of going for it in painting, like I said, there's never any right or wrong way to do it. Just kind of let them have fun and go for it. And when they get to the blowing part, the paint will still blow around and stuff like that. So don't worry too much if they're kind of not really following along exactly. But if you can encourage them just to kind of dab it and put it on just the water, that's fabulous. Okay, good job. And sometimes with the dabbing, you kind of have to repeatedly dab a few times to really get the colors saturated in the water. So you kind of poke at it a little bit instead of, typical painting, you're kind of doing brush strokes and stuff and going back and forth, whereas this one's kind of like an up and down motion. So it's kind of a new technique, and it might be a new technique for your little ones. You can work with the up and down motion. Once you have filled in the water with all the colors, now's the fun part. You're going to invite your little one. You're going to give them a straw, and you're going to invite them to blow the air onto the areas where the paint is. Now, it's a good idea to keep, you don't want the straw to touch the paint. It's a good idea to kind of keep a little bit of a distance and just have fun moving the paint around using your air with the straw. If you don't have a straw, you can literally also just blow on the paint too. But a straw is kind of fun. All right, so you're going to go ahead and blow the paint around. you know, little ones really have fun with this blowing the paint around. So just kind of let them go for it. Don't worry too much if some of the paint starts to kind of bleed into each other and melt into each other. Once it's dry, it's going to look really, really cool. And you're going to turn them into little monsters. So don't worry so much about whether the paint's mixing or not. And, you know, the most important thing is that your children are just having fun with the technique and blowing the paint. And it's all about the process. It's all about the fun of making. So yeah, and like I said earlier, if you wanted to, you could potentially have multiple sheets of paper ready, and you could say, okay, we're gonna let this one dry. So then you take this one and you take it aside, okay? And you move it, and then maybe you put another sheet down, and while that's drying, they can do another one. You know, they can do as many as they want. And then that way, they're still kind of having fun making while the first one's drying, and once it's dry, you can come back and do the second step. So we are going to now move to the second step of the project because we have one that we did earlier that's now nice and dry. And this is the fun part where you get to turn your little cool paint blown blobs into little monsters or creatures or characters. Yeah? Okay. So there's no, you could do, you can draw on it, you can glue the googly eyes on first. There's no right or wrong way to go. We are going to start with the googly eyes.
Yes.
We're going to start by just kind of deciding, oh, this kind of looks like where the eyes should go, and gluing the eyes onto the little blobs. And it's pretty amazing all of a sudden once you draw eyes or glue on googly eyes, all of a sudden they turn into these little creatures, which is really cool.
I could put mine right.
And what's kind of fun with the glue stick is you can, instead of putting the glue stick onto the paper, you can just take the googly eye and kind of rub it on top of the glue stick and then stick the googly eye onto the paper, which is fun. It's an easy way to get those googly eyes on the paper. Yeah. Stuck to me. And you might want to have a cloth handy in case your hands get full of glue and the googly eyes start sticking to your hands instead of the paper. If you have just a cloth hand, you can give them a quick wash on the cloth and then you won't have the googly eyes sticking to you instead of your paper. Once you guys start having the googly eyes on, all of a sudden you can start seeing the little creatures come to life. And that's when maybe you get out some of your markers and you can start adding little details. Maybe you draw on eyebrows onto your creatures. Maybe you want to add a nose to your creature.
Can I draw one?
Yeah, maybe you want to add a mouth to your creature. Okay, so you can get as creative and you can turn them into whatever you'd like. And if you have really, really small, like really little kids and they're just kind of gluing eyes wherever and drawing on whatever, that's fine too, right? Because it's about the fun and the making and the process. So, you know, whatever ends up being will be, and your kids will have a lot of fun making for sure. Oh, I like. Okay, so here's our little demonstration, finished monster. What should we call this?
Monster Splash Creation.
Monster Splash Creations. So there you have it. I hope you guys enjoy this activity.
Monster Splash Creation.
Yeah, so this is going to be our last video that we're going to be doing for you guys. Sadly, tear. We had lots of fun introducing you to some art activities and reading. Oh, there's Lachlan's really giving you a tear. And I hope you guys enjoyed getting creative with us. And we hope that you guys continue your creative journey now that you have some ideas and have gotten started with it. I hope you continue doing it with your children at home. And we want to thank you.
Yeah.
And we're going to say goodbye. Bye.